First of all, welcome. This is our very first scheduled event of Module 1 of the EUROPARC competence-based course, Competent Inclusive Communication. So it's great that you could be here and joining in. We have developed a little PowerPoint presentation, which I'd like to show you in just a few minutes. But before we get started, just some protocols. If you have a question, you can either put it in the chat, as we're already doing. It's great to see that there's such a lively interactivity in the chat, but you can also, if you put your video on, you can also just say, with a hands up, I'd like to ask a question. Hi, Loretta.
Hello.
So don't hesitate. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. We're learning as we're going along, so it's good that we can all do that together. And don't hesitate if you think, yeah, I'm not sure about this or what have you. You know, you might not be the only one with that question, so feel free to ask. Okay, without further ado, I'll start with this little mini presentation, I think, unless there's anything to add at this stage. No? You all okay? Oh, I should maybe ask, are you all getting on okay with the Moodle?
Yes.
Yeah? Can we see thumbs up? Excellent, excellent.
And also just thank you for your welcome package.
Oh, you're very welcome, yeah. Matej. Yes, good.
Nice one.
I'm still waiting on mine. But yes, I'm very glad that they were sent out and everyone received them. And I'm delighted that for the support that we had with that from our colleagues in Regensburg, Barbara, who's also in this meeting, and our colleague Christina as well. They were busy little elves packing all the information into envelopes and taking it all to the post office. So very good. Okay, let me try to share my screen. Oh, I can just see that Vaiko's joined, so that's jolly good. Let me see where we are. Oh, sorry, wait a minute. Here we are. Share. Too many things open on my screen. So I hope you can all see that now. Yep, you can see our presentation. Yep, good. I can see nodding heads, and very good that you've muted yourselves as well, because it cuts down with the background noise. Maybe I should just also say, if the bandwidth starts to slow down a little bit, which it sometimes can do in Zoom, it's always useful just to put your video off, just even temporarily, and then it should pick up pace. Okay. Well, it's maybe a bit strange for a British person to talk about Europe, given the current situation, and I feel a bit of a fraud. However, in my defence, I am Scottish, so that makes us different, and we are very much European. So I thought it would be useful just to give a brief overview of what Europe is. It's described somewhat poetically by a playwright in, I think, the 18th century, Christopher Marlowe. He describes Europe as being infinite riches in a little room. As a continent, it is something of an anomaly, just because of its diversity. We're the second smallest continent, or the sixth largest of 7, if size matters, and for some people it does. But we occupy 1/15 of the total land area of the world. Europe is also diverse in terms of its geology, its landforms, the climates that appear in Europe. And there are 50 countries which span 7 time zones. Europe's population is, 1/10 of the world's population. So we're not insignificant in that sense. And that population speaks 225 different languages. So can we talk about, given that diversity, can we talk about there being a sort of capacity building landscape? Europe, probably more than any other continent, has a rich diversity, you could call it, of institutions and policy frameworks intended to enable the various countries in Europe to work together, and particularly for nature. You can see the different institutions that are there. Some apply for the Emerald Network, which are broader than just the European Union. But then the European Union as well, and of course within that of direct relevance to our project, the Natura 2000 network, which is the legislative backbone to Natura 2000, the Birds and Habitats Directive. So there are 27,000 sites which cover more than 1.3 square kilometers, and that's terrestrial and marine. And working within that environment, there are a tremendous range of organizations that work at different levels, some nationally, some regionally, some across the whole of Europe, as EUROPARC does, that focus on capacity building and networking. To do our work, not all of the time, but some of the time, we rely on the European Commission's LIFE programme, and there's a statistic there, which is a big programme which supports primarily the implementation of Natura 2000, but not exclusively Natura 2000. And then beyond that, over and above that, there are various research programmes, such as Horizon 2020. Some of those might be familiar to you. In terms of nature management and capacity building specifically, I think within that context, there are different aspects that we should keep in mind when we talk about capacity building programs for nature management. It is phenomenally challenging. What sort of levels or scales should we be working at? Are we working at European level? Are we working at biogeographical level? Are we working at national level, regional level, or site level? And in truth, we're probably working, whether we realize it or not, at all of those levels. And indeed, we're probably working at a global level as well, in terms of how our individual protected areas and Natura 2000 sites contribute to and function in terms of their contributions to global biodiversity targets. For Natura 2000 managers, protected area managers, there can be a daunting choice to be made about how you allocate resources, where you allocate time. Is the imperative to tackle the pressures and threats that are affecting the condition of your site? Or is it perhaps to look at restoration of sites that have been in a poor condition but can be restored so that they're better able to function and improve their condition? And then on top of that, there is a growing recognition that management practices need to be continuously improving. So we're actually engaged in a program or a process of lifelong learning as Natura 2000 and protected area managers. The science the technology, the know-how, the resources that are available to us are continuously evolving. But then within Europe, as a specific challenge, we have to take into account the multilingualism of these 225 languages that are spoken within our continent. And they pose real challenges in a very practical sense for capacity building programs. Of course, within our course, our working language for the project for our course is English, but we have the two other courses which are working in Spanish and Romanian. But we're only really scratching the surface of that, because we know that a lot of practicing nature managers just don't have the linguistic skills that can enable them to be part of these types of programs. So how do we cascade our knowledge to local communities of managers involved in nature conservation? And then there are also differences in terms of culture and socioeconomic aspects that impact on the approaches and the ways of working in different countries. You can look at some countries which have a very devolved and flexible approach to nature management, but others are much more hierarchical and maybe central in terms of their approach. And neither one is right or wrong, but we have to try and find some balances or ways of working within those structures. There are differences in terms of attitude to citizen participation. Across nearly all, well, I would say all European countries, there have been different austerity policies which have impacted on our work and our capacity to do our work, which unfortunately has also meant that there are impacts on budgets available for training. So we need to be imaginative about how we can provide the means of building capacity that don't rely on the traditional sort of face-to-face and networking approaches. And also within the different countries within Europe, there are different scales of opportunity in terms of access to finances, as well as use of different technologies. So what does this mean? Is there, I wonder, and I hope we're all going to realize after we've completed this course, that is a key to unlocking these different challenges, to think of not what makes our working lives different, but what makes our working lives common. What features of our working lives do we have in common? And the question is then, can we think of Natura 2000 management and protected area management as a distinct profession? And very much within the Life Edu project, we firmly take that approach. There are common core competencies which all managers of nature require in order to be able to do their jobs. So we're focusing on the things that can enable you and help you and support you to do your work more efficiently, better, with more resources and knowledge, rather than what keeps us different and what makes us keeps us apart. So, excuse me. But above all, there are specific areas of competence, and this is a focus within the Life Edu project, that looks at engaging local communities, working in a very participatory manner, which is certainly required for effective implementation of Natura 2000, but it's also just good practice in general. And we should take into account the different socio-economic aspects and the various sectors that we sometimes have to work with in order to achieve our priorities for nature. So we have to think synergistically and perhaps opportunistically as well. But over and above all of this, the most important thing which will impact on how you do your work is your competencies in terms of communication. And that's why we've come up with this course, Competent Inclusive Communication. So Natura 2000 and protected area management can be demanding. You need to be competent and very much a technical specialist as part of your work, but in itself, that isn't enough. In order to achieve more for nature, you need to know who you're working with, how you communicate with them. You need to be able to listen to the concerns and also the interests of the stakeholders and local community groups that you're working with. And that requires a degree of consistency and patience. These relationships don't form overnight. They have to be continuously invested in and improved and nurtured. But if that can be established, you should be able to harness that power and the effectiveness of those relationships in order to enable you to achieve more for the nature that you have responsibilities for. Let me see. So before we go on to the next section, I just wanted to ask a quick question, and maybe at this stage I'll stop sharing my screen. Hi, Alec.
Hello.
Hi, good to see you. Have you all watched the Natura 2000 about Natura 2000 video?
Was that the small video with the second person and you were talking to each other, the like news hour video?
The very one, Alec.
Okay.
The very one.
Yes.
And what did you all think?
First impression, it looked a bit artificial. It was like it was a presentation.
Taken. It was intended to be slightly, you know the phrase, tongue-in-cheek?
Yes.
So we weren't being fully serious.
Mm-hmm.
But what did you learn from the video? I think that's the more important question. And that's not just to you, Alec, just to anyone.
Oh, my first opinion was it was quite general. It was inviting, but in my opinion, let's say it was needed to pinpoint eventually a couple of issues who could be more catching.
Yes. Okay. Anybody else?
Can I?
Yes.
Okay. So I watched the video. I watched it twice, and I think it was useful because you get a bigger point of what is needed. For example, for us, the managers of Natura 2000, what are the main problems that are happening now? And it's to better understand what Natura 2000 is. What does it mean? So for me, it was useful.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I can see some comments drifting up in the chats as well. A good introduction, set the scene, highlighting that people are central to the management of Natura 2000. Tamia says it made me curious for the next episode. Yes, coming soon. Newsreaders too. It was intended very much to be an introductory video, and absolutely, Alec. You know, we had a limited amount of time. We tried to pack in a lot of information, but it was purposefully intended to be wide and scene setting. But we will definitely come back to touch on and explore some of the issues that were contained in that. That's for sure. I think the only thing I would add is that, or emphasize, is that, FICO wants to know how we show. It's a trade secret, FICO. I'll tell you later. We have very talented people in the EUROPARC team. But it wasn't as straightforward. To get a 2-minute video took hours and hours and hours. But anyway, but it's there. So, but yeah, just to highlight some things from my perspective, in terms of the context of the Life e-Natura2000.edu project, Life Edu, it is very much, has been developed and is being implemented in response to EU and European Commission policy. So our bedrock for the project is, how can we help Natura 2000 managers to improve their capacity to be able to implement Natura 2000? And that's very strongly identified as a feature that came out of the fitness check for Natura 2000, which was conducted in 2016-2017. And from that, there emerged this policy paper, the EU action plan for, and I always get these 3 words always in the wrong order, so forgive me if I misquote, but people, nature, and economy. So that is very much the underlying rationale behind our project. It's our raison d'etre for the project, but much more fundamentally than that, we want, as a result of this project, for all of the participants, so you as a core group, but also the group in Spain, the group in Romania, and then eventually our wider constituency of the so-called casual project users, to identify ways through the project that you can improve your work. So we really want you to realize, as a result of your participation, a very practical benefit. So, and we'll come on to talk about that in more detail probably on Wednesday, but that is very much our underlying goal, that as a result of your time and your investment of time and your participation in the project, whatever you take away from the course, you are able to develop a piece of work or to implement some new knowledge in ways that perhaps you hadn't necessarily thought about before, that you are able to take forward and use in a very practical sense to support your work. Okay. I don't know, Carol, do you have anything to add to that? I know Carol's in the meeting as well, somewhere.
Yep, I'm here.
Yes, hiya.
Hi.
Oh, nice poster behind you, a banner.
Okay, I think I briefly met some of, if not most of you, when we did the introduction to the course, but just to reintroduce myself, I'm Carol Ritchie. I'm the Executive Director of the EUROPARC Federation, and I was the other newsreader in the video, if you didn't recognise me. So yeah, just to reiterate what Neil has just been saying there, that this is not a training course or a course about Natura 2000. So I think we just need to make that clear at the beginning. Everything that we're talking about today is just to really lay the foundation of the remainder of the course. This is a course about communicating Natura 2000. So it's less about what is Natura 2000 and more about the importance of Natura 2000 in terms of communicating that to a wide range of stakeholders. And that's where we're going to move on to for the remainder for the next 6 or 7 weeks. And yeah, we're very keen for you to also take the opportunity to critique our work, because we put some thought into how we want to communicate these elements to you, and you'll see some examples of that over the next several modules, So yeah, we use the newsreader element as a way of just presenting very briefly and very quickly the headline information about Natura 2000. So it wasn't meant to be an in-depth analysis, but do take some time to think about that. And as I say, we would value your critique as a communication tool in its own right. And yes, Vaiko, at some point when we're sitting chatting, we will happily share you the behind-the-scenes outtakes of how we made the videos. There's a story to be told there too. So yeah, just to underline that point, because really from this point on, from today onwards, we move away from just talking about Natura 2000 and to the competencies that we want to share with you, that we want to learn together with you about how to communicate the value and importance of Natura 2000 going forward. So that's that. So do you want me to move on to our next communication?
I think that would be good. If I could just maybe add one other thing, and this came from a presentation which I made at the European Commission. I think that was in a seminar dialogue in December 2018, actually. And the point of discussion there was, why are protected areas good at communicating what they do, whereas Natura 2000 sites struggle with communicating what they do? And that's not something that I think we should answer or try to answer just now, but I think there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from the community of protected areas, certainly the parks that EUROPARC represents, because they have some excellent examples of effective and very applied communication approaches. And I think Natura 2000 managers can definitely benefit from their experience. But we're all in this together. As Carol says, it's not one or the other. It's very much how can we as a community of nature managers help and support and learn from each other. So, good. Okay, you good to go with the...
So
it's live.
Yeah, exactly. As we said, we try to choose different stories to tell about Natura 2000, and certainly, from Neil's introduction, and I'm sure from your own experience, quite often I think Natura 2000 and the whole aspect of what it is and why do we have these designated sites is certainly not in the forefront of most people's minds. And I think one of the things we wanted to try and do with this topic was to humanize it, to sort of give it a bit more of a human face, like the newsreaders, things that people would be more familiar with. And one of the things, certainly in the UK and certainly in Scotland, where Neil and I are from, is a pub quiz. Some of you may be familiar with this. People like to go out for an evening and have a drink and have a good time with their friends, and part of that is to have a quiz, and everybody's in a little bit of competition with each other about general knowledge and topics of the day. And we imagined, what would it be like if one of the pub quizzes was about Natura 2000? Imagine if ordinary people were sitting in a pub and answering questions about the Natura 2000 network. So with that in mind, we'd like to take a short pause from the Zoom. Don't leave the Zoom, just mute your microphone and your video if you need to. And we asked you to open up the Moodle. So we need you now to go into the Moodle, and inside the Moodle is another video, which should now, fingers crossed, be open for you. And it should take just a couple of minutes, and we'd like you to step aside from the Zoom, if you can imagine that, and just watch that video for a couple of minutes. There will be some questions in it. You've been invited to take part in this pub quiz, so maybe have a pencil and a piece of paper ready to answer the questions. And as I say, we'll take a short pause and we'll come back in 2 or 3 minutes and enjoy the pub quiz, and we'll see how you've got on. So open up the Moodle, click the link onto the video. Let us know if you've got any problems with that. Stick your hand up or give us a message in Zoom. And hopefully in the next 3 or 4 minutes, you'll come back and tell us how you got on in the pub quiz. So just let me know that that's okay for everybody. Okay, how are we getting on, everybody? Has everybody finished watching the video? Just wave or give me some sort of a signal.
Yeah, I think from the chats, most people are done. Yeah.
So again, that was just another tool, communication tool that we use to just try and lighten up a little bit the topic of Natura 2000. It can sometimes be a little bit heavy and technical and legal and whatever, and sometimes boring. Yeah. And so how did you all get on? I hope. I mean, yes, we realise that the answers come on a little bit quick there, but certainly it was just an opportunity just for you to take a moment to understand just how much you did know about Natura 2000. So did anybody get all the questions right? No. Okay. So maybe I'll test you out with just a couple of other extra ones since you're all here. You can answer in the chat. So I'll give you a moment and you can answer in the chat. So here's two of the questions I didn't use in the pub quiz. Who can designate a Natura 2000 site? Is it A, only private landowners? Is it B, the European Commission? Or is it C, a member state? You have 10 seconds to answer. A, B, or C? Yep, the member state. Most of you have answered that. So member states actually designate areas under the Birds and Habitats Directives as a Natura 2000 site, as an SEC or whatever, which we'll come on to in a wee minute. Last question, just see if we can figure this one out. How are Natura 2000 sites funded? Are they funded by private donations? A. Are they funded by the Life Nature Fund? B. Or are they funded by C, member states? 10 seconds. So that's a good point for discussion there, because obviously in some situations the management of the Natura 2000 site is entirely funded by state money to the Natura 2000 site. In some cases that money is supplemented by Life Natura funds or some other European funding, or even national funding or regional funding. And it could even be funded through private donations for some work happening. Liliana, could we ask you to mute your...
I've just done it, Carol. I've just done it, yeah.
All right, thanks, right, sorry. Sorry. So, and as Neil mentioned earlier, that often depends on the political and the jurisdictional context within which you operate. Some countries it's entirely state funded, in other countries it will be a combination of different kinds of fundings. So the answer there really was A, B, and C. It was another one of those little trick questions. So again, we just wanted to put that out there to you just as a little example of a way of communicating about Natura 2000. And for us, these two exercises, the newsreader video and this video, is just to bring us all to the same level. Because as I say, this is not a course about Natura 2000, so we're not really going into huge detail about the directives or the legislation itself, but it's just to bring that to your mind that these are some of the aspects about Natura 2000, and these will come out throughout the course, particularly, you see I have a problem with that word, and I also have a problem with biogeographical sites, so you can make me say that as often as possible and I'll probably still get it wrong. So really that was just a little fun exercise to show you that there are ways that you could communicate about your Natura 2000 sites in interesting and fun ways. It doesn't all have to be heavy technical information. I'm not saying these are the best ways or the only ways, they're just some examples that we chose to share with you. As Neil also mentioned just earlier, you know, we work across Europe, well, thankfully not we in EUROPARC, in 225 languages. So just being able to communicate about what you're doing on your Natura 2000 site, you know, presents challenges. And we hope that some of the tools and the ideas that we're going to give you throughout the next 6 or 7 weeks will help you find solutions to those challenges, whether they be linguistic challenges, political challenges, or just trying to come up with new ways of communicating and speaking to the people around you. Because it's not just, we don't want you to just think about what is Natura 2000. We want you to be thinking about those 2 objectives that were mentioned in the pub quiz there, that, you know, what is it that Natura 2000 there is for? It's there to preserve and protect species and habitats, but it's also there to reconcile nature conservation and, you know, the needs of communities, the socio-economic needs. So really want you to be starting to think about, who am I communicating this to and in what ways? And as I say, we hope that over the next 6 or 7 weeks we'll be able to share some new ways of doing that. But again, just before we leave Natura 2000, I'd like to just show you a tool that might be useful to you. I'm going to share screen now because I'm going to open up this tool on my computer here. And this, what I'm about to show you, is the basis of the task that we've set for you in your Moodle. So what I'm going to show you now is what I'm going to be asking you to do in your task. I'll explain a wee bit more as we go through. So give me a second whilst I just set this up. Like Neil, I have about 1,000 windows open, so I've got to find the right one. Where is it? Here we are. So, is anyone familiar with the Natura 2000 network viewer? I'm just moving you across my screen. Hopefully, can you see my screen first of all?
Yes.
Yeah, so what you're looking at here is the front page of the public Natura 2000 viewer. Can anybody give me a wave if this is something that they've seen before or used before?
Replies coming in from Ramon, Beba, yes. Martina, yes.
Okay, good.
Lucas,
I mean,
yes.
we kind of expected some to be familiar and some less familiar. So I'm just going to go through just a little exercise here, a little demonstration, and this will be the basis, as I said, of your task. So if we go into the Natura 2000 viewer, I'm going to go up to the top first, and I'm going to just use the basic search to find a place. I'm going to find Scotland. Where is it? This will, you might want to take your webcams off for a few minutes because I can see that the bandwidth is already slowing because I'm doing this live. But as long as you can see my screen, I don't need to see your face right now. I'm sure we can catch up in a minute. So I've gone into Scotland, and the Natura 2000 viewer has found Scotland, which I'm very pleased about. And I'm now going to zoom into Scotland, and I'm going to look for a Natura 2000 site. Now, I might have one in mind. I might have an interest in a particular species, so I would type that species into the, so let's just get that away. Type this into the, you know, the, what do you call it? The search box there. But as it is, I'm just going to use the zooms because I'm just going to be going on a little tour of Scotland to try and find some interesting Natura 2000 sites. So. Okay, we're getting a little bit closer. Ah, now we're right. I'm going to use my screen. Yeah, I'm afraid the internet now, because we're doing this live, is proving to be quite a challenge. So I'll go as quickly as I can to try and let you see what I want to happen here. Okay. So if you can see, I'm heading for the town of Stirling because that's where I come from, and that's where and I can see a tiny little Natura 2000 site just here that I want to examine a bit more closely. So I'm going to click on that. It's looking for the Natura 2000 site. And what will come up, hopefully, is a little mini description of that site. It's telling me what it's been designated under. It will, once you open it up. It's telling me it's an area of 62.46 hectares, and it's called Kippenrake Glen. And if I then click on to the standard data form, for those of you who are familiar with this, hopefully this will download. So it should open up the standard data form for this Natura 2000 site, and there it is. The standard data form then will tell me everything, but it'll tell me what I need to know about this site, what it's designated as, its longitude and latitude if you want to find it, and there's some of the species that this particular area is important for, lutra, the otter, and salmo salar salmon. It then goes on to give a description or a coding for the importance of these species, the habitat character, and some of the threats and pressures that are impacting on that site. I mean, there's usually an additional form which lower in the sheet here. I can download the form which gives the full explanation of all these different codings. And there's a map of the site. Oops, I need to zoom in like that. And I've chosen this site here because right on here where this road crosses is where I live. So this is actually the Natura 2000 site on my doorstep, exactly where I live. So I'm going to come out of sharing screen because it's quite heavy on the bandwidth. So if you want to come back into the Zoom, that would be great to see you. So that's just one tool, I think, that's an interesting and useful way, again, to introduce people, because when it moves fast, it's a good interactive online tool that is useful for people to just browse around Europe and see what's out there, find out where all the otter protected sites are across Europe, if otters are what you're interested, or freshwater pearl mussels or anything. So many of you indicated that you were familiar with this tool. Have you ever, if you can send me a message just indicating if you've ever used it, in what ways have you used it? Have you just used it as a tool for research or to find out something for yourself? Or have you ever thought to use it as a means of public communications? I'll give you a moment just to have a wee think about that and see if you can just put some answers on the chat. Project preparations, yeah. I have to say I've done the same. For those of you perhaps who've never seen it before, did you find it interesting and useful? Projects. Wow, project preparation, personal curiosity. Yeah. Do you think it would be a useful way of, if you had a visitor centre or even putting a link to it on your own websites, as just a tool to introduce people to the wider network, to show that your Natura 2000 site is in fact part of a huge network of sites across Europe? Particularly if you were looking for Natura 2000 habitats that are the same as yours. So if you're protecting otters on a river, then you might want to look for other Natura 2000 sites who have otters on rivers and make contact with them in order to share an experience. And that's potentially something we'll be doing in this course. So, and I don't want to labour the point because, as I say, in your Moodle at the end of this session, we've asked you to prepare a task. I've asked you to look for a Natura 2000 that's of interest to you. It can be just one that you're curious about. It could be the one that you actually work in. Or it could just be, particularly for those of you who are outside of the EU 27, it might just be a place that you're interested in. So there is a task for you to go through that exercise that I've just done there and to upload, if that's the correct word, but to put the information into the common wiki that we're creating over the next, over the rest of the course. So again, this is the baseline information that will be used, that you are able to use throughout other aspects of the course in terms of the competent, inclusive communications that we're hoping to expose you to. So do take a look at the task after the session today. You don't have to finish it today, but we've set a deadline for you to have completed that, because it is important that we have captured that information before the rest of the modules start. So I'm going to hand back over to Neil now, just to draw our session to a conclusion.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Carol. And for me, I had seen the EURO2000 viewer before, but it really is just a phenomenally powerful tool, you know, but it's maybe like it can be too much, especially because of the sort of shorthand it uses, the various abbreviations and acronyms. For people who work with standard data forms, etc., that's probably all very familiar, because yeah, they're usually involved in reporting about their Natura 2000 sites or what have you. But for others that are involved in practical management, it's perhaps less familiar. But I think the range of comments indicated it really is an interesting resource. So we're very pleased to give you this opportunity to explore it a bit further. And as Carol said, you know, we have defined this task, and we will revisit that task and grow the information that's shared by you on the Moodle wiki as the various modules continue. So yeah, we're doing quite well for time. It's just over 50 minutes into our first Zoom. So I just wanted to share a final screen, if I can find it. Too many things open. Here we are. Okay, do you see anyone you know here? Could you all see my screen? Excellent, very good, very good. Well, first of all, for those of you that were able to contribute in terms of your task one, thank you all very, very much. Barbara and I worked last week on preparing a project newsletter. So you are all featuring in that project newsletter. Hopefully you have received the newsletter. I think that should have been that should have happened. It was sent on Friday. But if for any reason any of you haven't received that newsletter, just let us know through the Moodle, and we can make sure that we can check your email addresses. You should all be standard recipients. But just on that point as well, can I just say how impressed we were with the range of submissions, the videos, the text-based submissions as well. Some very imaginative uses of PDFs, etc. Really informative, and I think it just goes to show what a really diverse group of people we have participating in our course. And yeah, we're delighted that you're here with us on this journey. More than anything though, as well as being our learners on the course, and we as I said earlier, we really have the ambition that you will realize a very tangible and practical benefit as a result of your investment of time, but also because you are our chosen people. We are really relying on you to give us that feedback, to give us your responses, your critiques, what you enjoyed, what you thought could be improved, what you found to be particularly useful as the course is delivered. So there will be an evaluation process, which is being coordinated, well, by me. I'm coordinating it, but the evaluation is independent. It's conducted by an external company who will be at certain points in touch with you, and we would be extremely grateful if you would respond to their questionnaires and their requests for feedback. I'm working with them to try and ensure that the flow of that evaluation process is not too intrusive, so it doesn't become, oh, here we go, another evaluation process again. And we're trying to keep it with a very light touch, but also, yeah, we do need to ask some questions to probe specific aspects of the course, and also because that will inform our evaluation of the project as well. There was, when the Moodle opened on Monday last week, a participants guide. That has now since been updated for two things: the course blog and the course wiki as well. But they are now in the participants guide. So if you'd looked at the version earlier last week, maybe just revisit that, especially the references. There's a sort of step-by-step explanation of how your information from the Natura 2000 viewer can be uploaded into the wiki. So I think that was all I had to say. I would just like to ask you if you have any questions, or if there's anything, you know, from a practical perspective that you'd be looking for some information on or feedback on. No questions? You're a very quiet bunch, but that's because you're all muted, I think. Yes, all the presentations will be available on the Moodle, and they will all be recorded, as I say. We just need to explore the different options we have for sharing the recordings, because they're massive files. So whether they actually are housed on the Moodle, or we just have to include a link just because they are 40 million tetrabytes heavy, you know, we'll identify a solution for that. I did not see the wiki, but I check one more time. Okay, Ursula, yes, you can. The link to the wiki is given. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, the wiki is on the Moodle, and yeah, you should be able to access that information, as I say, in the participants guidance. But again, if you have any questions or anything isn't unclear, don't hesitate to let us know. There is also the blog on the Moodle, so you can use that to ask questions of each other. You know, don't necessarily wait on Carol or I or Teresa when it's her module to come back to you. You know, maybe someone else has already found, someone in the group has already found a solution to that. So please share that information and help each other out as much as possible. Okay. I think that's all. I have to say. Carol, anything else?
A couple of just quick things. We are, Neil and I are going to open a forum this week, soon after this session is finished. We'll repose the questions that we mentioned throughout the session and perhaps a few extra ones. So again, just dip in and out of that during the next few days with some answers and or additional questions that you haven't been able to ask during this session. Did you want me to mention the webinar, Neil, or do you want to do that?
Oh, sorry, yeah, on you go, Carol, yep.
Also, as an extra bonus this week, we have a special guest joining us on Friday, Dick Hilbers from Crossbill Guides. He is offering a very interesting webinar about communicating, you know, Natura 2000 from someone from the private sector's perspective, you know, as a commercial organisation, how they approach communicating Natura 2000, both you know, for the wide public consumption, but also very much done in conjunction with, you know, the integrity of the Natura 2000 site in mind. So please join us for that. You need to pre-register for that website and that webinar. And I think we've already sent the links out to you. If not, I think they're in the Moodle. So please do that, and we look forward to meeting you on Friday. But before Friday, we will see you for our first Zebinar, which is a new word that we've coined, a mixture between a webinar and a Zoom meeting, and that's on Wednesday morning. I'm not going to say what time because I'm going to be in a different time zone, as is Vico, so it will just confuse people. But the time that it says on the Moodle CET, and
11.
And that's where we're moving. As I said earlier, we'll be moving away from Natura 2000, and we really will begin our journey about communication, or competent inclusive communications. And we're starting off with communicating with purpose, and we'll be discussing that on Wednesday morning. I look forward to seeing you then.
Excellent, thanks, Carol. And yes, as Carol says, do please pre-register. I only heard on Friday that I think we already had 75 people that had registered for the webinar, so I'm sure that number has gone up.
No,
so
we have 150 now.
150, Barbara, wow. They won't all join, I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an opportunity to interact with a much larger audience. But Dirk's a fantastic speaker, so you will enjoy that webinar. Sorry, I was just very quickly scanning. Excellent, Tim, you've registered, super duper. FICO and Tim had a similar question. I understand we're going to focus on Natura 2000 communications. Is it a problem to approach communications of other protected areas designations? We're dealing a lot with national parks.
Yeah, I stuck in an answer there. Yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah.
What did you say?
I said, whenever you hear us mentioning the word Natura 2000, just hear in your own mind national park, nature reserve, Ramsar,
nature management,
EUROPARC, whatever it is. The actual, this is all we're going to talk about Natura 2000 is today. After this, we're focusing on the communication skills, the competencies you need, and you need those competencies whether it's a national park, a Natura 2000 site, a marine protected area, whatever it is. We are just using, obviously, Natura 2000, if I may say so, because our funder specifically focuses on Natura 2000 sites. But obviously, it's relevant to a broad range of all protected area categories. So yes, it is relevant to all your protected areas.
Exactly. I've always said that. If it's good for Natura 2000, it's good for everyone and everything. So excellent. Okay. So thank you all very much. Just almost 4:05 Central European time. So excellent. I think that was a very useful kickoff to our course and our first module. So we look forward to seeing you all on Wednesday, and hopefully some of the others that weren't able to join today can also join us on Wednesday as well. We realise you're busy people, but yeah, it's very good to have this interactive live participation wherever that is possible. So thank you very much. So without further ado, I'm going to close the meeting. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.